Hi, everyone. I am Matt Grubbs, a senior producer here for New Mexico in Focus. As we record this program, we're in day one of heightened restrictions on social interaction, as you can see. The governor made that announcement Wednesday as she revealed that New Mexico has had its first case of COVID-19 spread through the community. That means it's been passed to someone who had no known travel history or known contact with an infected person. The governor continued her aggressive response to the pandemic, ordering an end to all mass gatherings, telling restaurants, breweries, and bars to close, except for delivery and takeout, and shuttering places like malls, recreation centers, community centers, spas, and movie theaters, as the state tries to slow the spread of the novel coronavirus. The goal here, prevent the state's hospitals from becoming overwhelmed. So here is our virtual line to share their thoughts with us about the state's response to the COVID-19 outbreak in New Mexico. Our panel, of course, includes our host, Gene Grant. Gene, good to see you there.
And thank you. Remotely?
Yes, absolutely. Line regular and former New Mexico House Minority Whip Dan Foley, who is still able to do a fist pump virtually. He actually is in our building, but on a remote link here in solidarity. Former state senator and a familiar face for us, Eric Griego. Eric, thanks for joining us. And another line regular, Sophie Martin, joins us from her ad hoc home studio. Hey, Sophie.
Hi.
All right, Gene, we're going to toss it over to you. Let's get into this.
Thank you, Matt. And thank you all for doing this way. We're trying to model for the community what it means to be socially distant from each other. I want to especially thank Eric Griego for driving this morning. Thank you, Eric, very much. There's always a technological fix out there, and we're just going to do our best here. Let's start with our governor's speech to the state yesterday. Dan, I want to start with you on this one. I want to get all of your overall thoughts about this, but what did you hear from the governor that made you feel a little bit better about what we have going here, or did you not feel good about what we've got going here? What was your reaction to the governor yesterday?
Yeah, I think the first thing that we have to do, and I try to be one of those people that practices what I preach, right? I mean, I think we need to stop all the partisanship. We need to stop finding reasons to dislike someone from the other party in these crises like this and say, listen, she's a Democrat, I'm a Republican, she doesn't have the right answers. Look, I think based on the information she has, she's doing the right things. I think she's taking aggressive action. I know people aren't happy. A lot of people aren't happy with it. But, we'll never know if we did too much. We'll definitely know if we didn't do enough. And so, listen, I think it's time that we stop trying to find reasons to disagree with everybody. It's times like this that, we need to stop saying, look, I don't like this person. I don't think this the partisanship needs to go. I think she's. Are
you talking about anyone in particular, Dan? Are you talking about anyone that?
All of us, everybody in general. It's time to start finding the fact, people are, I think everybody's trying to do the best they can based on the information they have. Now, that doesn't mean we agree with them. That doesn't mean we, whether people think, we're doing too much, we're not doing enough. There's people out there that are going to tell you, look, I can tell you in circles that I run around in, I mean, they think the governor's doing a horrible job. Oh, she's doing way too much. And I've just been saying all along, listen, she's going to do what she needs to do based on the information she's getting at the time. And in this situation, we're not fortunate to say, hey, listen, I'll get information and I'll dissect it for the next 5 hours and I'll make a decision. This thing is moving. The things you have to do are moving so fast from, hey, we don't want groups of 50 people meeting to within a few hours, we drop it down to 10 people. And so, we just don't know what's going on. And so, look, I don't agree with all of the governor's policies. There's no doubt about that. But I think she's handling this the best she can, trying to take care of things, trying to get answers out there to people. I think she's made state government very responsive. I mean, I've appreciated the emails, the ability for folks to get in touch with people. I think it's bringing a level of ease. At least people are saying, look, at least we're ahead of the game compared to some other states. So I think all in all, I think she's done a good job. But I think, contrary to what others may think, I think the president's doing a decent job. I think everybody's doing a decent job based on the information they have, what they're trying to accomplish. It's easier to, in my opinion, to say, look, I'm going to focus on my city or the county than it is the state, which is easier to say I'm going to focus on what all 50 states have to do. So, I mean, I just think this thing is such a fast-moving target. Decisions that are being made today, by the time they get disseminated, we're finding out it's not exactly what we should have done. I appreciate the fact that the governor has not escalated this to, martial law in 30 seconds. I mean, we seem to be taking a fairly pragmatic approach to looking at, listen, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. I mean, she could have come right out yesterday and said, we're closing everything down. She didn't. She took a very pragmatic approach, I thought. We're going to close malls, we're going to stop big gatherings, restaurants. I mean, most of the stuff that she was advocating, a lot of these companies have been self-doing anyway. I mean, I don't know if you've walked into a Starbucks or any of the other places. I was surprised, though. I walked into a Blake's Lotaburger the other day, and, they're not seating all these people, but there was like 90 people in line trying to order their food. So I think there's still a process of trying to figure this out. I think Matt pointed something out when we were off camera. I think it was Matt or Gene or somebody that said, our grandparents were asked to fight a war. We're being asked to stay home and sit on a couch. So, I mean, I think we can make it through this. I think we're going to be okay. And I think the governor and her team have done a decent job a very good job based on the information they have and the outcomes they're trying to achieve.
Mm-hmm. Sophie, your reaction to this? I mean, the governor laid down the marker. Emergency public health order goes into effect Thursday, today, and through April 10th. And of course, this is, like Dan mentioned, very fast moving. We're not quite sure where this is going to go as time goes on. But was she aggressive enough? Was she proactive enough? What was your sense of it?
I think we won't really know until later. I mean, I think, to Dan's point, we will know if we didn't go far enough. But this is as you guys have mentioned, this is a fast moving situation. I expect that we're going to continue to hear from the mayors of our communities, the governor, the courts, the chief justice at the Supreme Court, that all of those leaders are going to continue to evaluate information as it comes through. What's challenging, I think, right now, and to Dan's point from before, I was in a Walgreens not too long ago, and it was, line of people waiting for the pharmacist, and you could see that about half the people in line had heard the 6-foot thing about social distancing, and the other half had not. We can't expect in a time like this that even with these very urgent messages coming from government, coming from media, coming from faith leaders, that everybody is actually hearing, processing, getting the message. Now, here's where it's going to become painfully apparent to people, even if they are not paying attention. Companies have started to lay folks off. Small businesses are laying folks off. People are not going to have income now and in the relatively near future, potentially for a longer period of time. And we've talked a lot, I think, already about what's happening to restaurants and breweries and cafes and housekeepers and all of that. But it goes beyond that. I was talking with the owner of a moving company the other day, and he was telling me that he was going to probably have to lay people off too. So all of these very basic things that we think about, continuing to work, people are holding off. Furniture companies, their sales are way down. Like we're just not engaging in the sort of the commercial flow right now I think for very rational and normal reasons, but that's going to hit individuals very, very hard.
Eric, she was pretty tough on the federal government. She made great pains to talk about what she's not getting for PPEs, personal protective equipment. The state had pre-ordered gear and has gotten 25% of it. The president and the vice president will be speaking with the governors today in a conference call, and we'll all sort of stand by and see what results from that. But from what you heard yesterday, she's clearly having to fight for her own state, a small state that has not had a big impact, but we never know. What was your sense of how she took on the federal government there, and is that helping in this situation as well?
Well, I think we're fortunate that we happen to have a governor who is a former health secretary who is, considered among her colleagues certainly as a bit of an expert on health policy, but she's had to face some of these issues on a much smaller scale, but understands that what should be driving this is science, and what should be driving this is the best knowledge we have in public health. And, she's never questioned that. I mean, she's never pivoted to a political position. So I've been, I've heard from colleagues all in the country that, we have a governor who gets it, And so, and, you know, I don't know if she was Republican and she was doing this, I would say the same thing. So I think this transcends ideology. I also don't agree with her on everything, but I think that she has demonstrated why this federalist system we sort of have is so important, that we hope that on certain issues like defense and foreign policy and pandemics, that you have a strong federal response that's organized and coordinated and has the resources and the ability to deal with it. But the backstop is governors who can really step in. And I think we're doing as well as any state and better than most in terms of our response. But I do think she was absolutely justified in expressing the frustration that I think a lot of folks have at this lackluster response from the federal government, to say that states, especially small, poor states like New Mexico, should somehow be in a position to find their own ventilators and to figure out how to get some of the basic things we need into the supply chain. It's not how things are supposed to work. If there's ever a time when all of us should agree that we need a strong, not just a strong leader. So it's just not just about the president. This is about a federal response in a time of crises in our country, to say, all right, we're gonna muster whatever resources we need to make sure that we deal with not just a vaccine. There was a lot of talk today in the president's press conference about a vaccine, and I hope that that there are some movements in the near term about that. But the more basic thing is, what can we do to really help states through this in terms of their hospital capacity and the equipment capacity, and then personnel, where those are going to be the limiting factors. And Sophie sent around this very sobering article about how, from the New York Times, I think it was, how soon New Mexico and many other states are going to be at capacity in terms of their hospital accommodations for folks who have serious versions of this illness. If there's ever a time when we need a strong, focused strategy at the federal level, I mean, we need it now. And I think she's doing her job, and she's fighting for the people of New Mexico. And I hope everybody's governor is as forthcoming and courageous to say, this, you can't leave this to the states. This has to be a federal response.
Guys, it's real quickly. I just want to give you a quick time update. We got about 3 minutes left. Sophie, your comment, but also state Republicans are already calling for a special session. We know we're going to have to pay for this somehow. I think maybe the consensus is spend now and figure it out, but we are going to have to figure it out.
So, to that point, one of the things that happened when the governor issued her determination that the state was in an emergency is that it did free up federal funds for the state. And so it's not just going to sit on us. But what I think is interesting, in the Washington Post this week, there was a column from one of their libertarian columnists. They have a libertarian columnist, and she said, as libertarians, we typically don't want to see government action, and we sort of acknowledge that there may be times that it is necessary. This is one of those times. So even amongst very fiscally conservative political actors, there is this growing sense that the money needs to be freed up, the government needs to be enabled to take strong action to protect the citizens and residents of our country.
Mm-hmm. A couple of real quick ones. I know, Matt, if you have a time check, about 2 minutes.
You've got it, yeah.
Out there, okay. Eric, let me start with you on this and swing around the table real quick here. Undocumented folks in Spanish language. The governor said, very quoting, "Do not be afraid of New Mexico for undocumented folks." Is that the right approach?
Yeah, I mean, it's a public health crisis. It's a great learning opportunity for us. Like, we're in this together. We're one community. It doesn't matter what your documentation status is or your party is. This will, by definition, affect all of us if we don't band together. We can be transmitted to folks who serve us, who work in our communities, who our kids go to school with. So everybody needs to be included in this, and we have to think about how we're going to communicate and make it as accessible as possible, both the aid but also the prevention. I think we need to be thinking about language issues, and also in the Navajo Nation. We have some new cases in the Navajo Nation. Like, what are we doing to get the word out there? So.
Mm-hmm. Dan, real quick, same question. reaching out to folks who might not be inclined to work with the government in certain ways. This is an extraordinary situation. Was the governor taking the right approach there, talking to undocumented folks that way?
The coronavirus is not an ethnically effective virus, right? It's not only affecting certain races of people. I mean, this is affecting everybody. I mean, it's not, not is it just our undocumented deal. I don't know what we're doing with our homeless population, right? I mean, we've already talked about how bad this is because they can't isolate themselves. And on my drive today, I mean, there's still, large gatherings of homeless people that are, I don't know what we're doing to help those individuals. And if we don't figure it out, that's the kind of stuff that's going to cause us a problem in the long run. And look, I just, I think the governor's done a very good job. I commend her. I don't think it was the right move to take shots at the president, take shots at the feds. That's what I'm referring to when I talk about the partisanship. Let's just get this thing going. Let's just get over. Look, there'll be no lack of time for us all to get together and talk about how much we don't like each other and how much we don't agree with each other. There'll be plenty of time for that. Right now, we've got homeless individuals to deal with. We got rural populations to deal with. Look, there's people in this state. There's a large percentage of people in the state that if it's not on rabbit ear television, they don't know what's going on. They're not dialing in the internet. They're not driving it.
Yep.
I mean, there's people. I'm telling you right now, there's people in New Mexico today driving in the town for the first time in rural areas, going, "What's going on?" And they're being told. So, we got to figure this out, and we got to work together to get it done.
Sophie, should we plan on just not having school the rest of this school year? Should folks be prepared for that eventuality?
Oh, I certainly think they should be prepared. And more I'm hearing from educators that that's what they expect is like Kansas, which has already at the time of taping made an announcement that its students are not coming back until the fall. I think we can anticipate. I mean, I'm also hearing from universities around the region that their expectation is that they may not be back until the fall as well. I think parents, unfortunately, students need to be prepared for that possibility.
Matt, take it away if you need to.
Absolutely. We're out of time, guys. Thanks. Coming up, we're going to talk to a couple of UNM psychiatrists about how to deal with what's going on in our society.